seeing the guitar. My son, my oldest son, Michael, has a passive income going for him. And what he does is he started out at garage sales, at swap meets, buying at the time the most popular thing, which was CDs and DVDs, and then resells them on Amazon or on eBay. And it subsequently has evolved into books. And so yesterday, he generally goes out very early Saturday morning when all of the garage sales go on sale. And he picked up some books, and then he spotted, kind of tucked away in the back, a guitar. And so he asked the people, is that guitar for sale? And they said, yeah, but we think we put it out later. It doesn't look like, it has any value. We want to unload the books, preferably. So he said, well, would you mind if I looked at it? My son has a whole collection of guitars. He plays, and in his time has sung, and it has a very musical side to him. So they said, okay, sure, take a look. Takes a look, looks outwardly like, not in the best shape, but not bad. And so he says, okay, how much do you want for it? And they said $25. He said, yeah, that seems good. Gives him $25. And of course, my son, the think of the entrepreneur, heads to a guitar shop to get an appraisal. And turns out that guitar is worth $3,500. So he posted, to all of us in the family, a text that ran from A to, as in Canada, we would say from A to Z. And so he's just all excited. He said, I want to fix it up and I want to add it to my collection. I want to use it. So what does that have to do with vexations, virtues, and values? Who cares? I don't know. But somehow it always fits in. I'm a firm believer that you work with what life hands you in the moment. And whatever you think you're prepared to do and plan to do, John Lennon said it, life has other plans. And so I was doing a posting on my Facebook page and sitting talking to a friend at my famous and popular drinking hole, Starbucks, and she asked me, with what everything's going on, she said, I know your attitude, and I have the same sense of everything, wanting it so much to turn around in a way that brings us together rather than continues to split us. And she said, so how do you really feel, beyond giving me God is all there is and God and I are one, which is great, wonderful, it's got to be there. So I heard myself say, I feel like I'm in a state of vexation. Now, I love words, but generally I don't go around saying I feel vexated or whatever the proper presentation of that word would be. And so it started me on a whole chain of thinking that, yes, the way that we experience our life, before this moment, before whatever you feel about what is currently going on in the world, however you may perceive it could be better, and life can always be better. It's an ever-evolving, ever-emerging intelligence, propelled and impelled by the presence of love. And so it's of value to start reflecting on what causes vexation. So I started looking at all the teachers from all ages, and the Buddhists, in terms of vexation, if you took the origin of the word vexation, its etymology, the word about it that best describes it for me is harass. And who hasn't felt harassed? I defy. Has anybody in this room ever not felt harassed, irritated, annoyed, frustrated, agitated, in a state of angst? Of course, we all have. And so the Buddhists put it together with 5, what they call the 5 poisons. And the 5 poisons, according to Buddhism, are attachment. And we know, of course, that according to the Buddhists, life is suffering. And we suffer because we are attached. We're attached to absolutely having our desires, our longings, fulfilled. And when that doesn't happen, we become agitated and harassed only by ourselves. Nobody is ever doing anything to us. We're always doing it to ourselves. So they describe these poisons, attachment and aversion. Because if I'm attached to having fulfilled what I desire, I am obviously going to have an aversion, a pushing away and a resistance to anything that doesn't look the way that I choose to have it look more favorable to me. The third poison is ignorance. And that doesn't mean you're stupid, you're dumb, you're dull. It means to ignore the essence of who we really are as divine incarnations, as manifestations of truly the most high thought you can think, the most noble inclinations that you can bring to any situation, to bring yourself the gift of a peaceful heart, a clear mind, and a sense of nobility about wanting to give the best of yourself. And to be ignorant is simply, I don't know that. I'm not aware of it at the moment. I know something exists beyond what I can describe in the usual ordinary state of consciousness that I live with day by day. And yet from the depth of my being, I know there's something else. I most likely see it as it's evidenced in the heroes and the heroines that show up during the ordinary course of life. There's a segment on ABC News that they feature, and I think it could be linked to the Honda commercial about kindness. They show evidence of how people have demonstrated kindness in their everyday activity, whether at home, whether they're teachers, whether they're out in the corporate world, and yet going that extra mile to truly help, support, heal, and uplift somebody else, to really be in service to humanity. So the fourth poison is pride. And that's the part where what we describe psychologically as our ego self. It wants to claim credit, or, as Kathy was referring, it wants to tell us how much we're off the mark and how we are not enough. So it takes flip sides of the coin. I'm either too much and applying all of the credit to my humanness, when in reality, the best that we'll ever see of ourselves comes from that other part of our mind, the other part of our heart, the very soul of what is most divine and most human within all of us. So pride falleth, there's all kinds of references, particularly in the Bible, that refer to that pride has to be let go in terms of humility, a word that I think in our Western culture we're not too partial to. But that's part of it, letting go of the ego's pride and allowing more of a kindness and a gentleness, while most definitely a spiritual authority, to emerge out of that from the divine nature of us. And then the last one is jealousy, that we still have that tendency to look at what someone else has and to have a discomfort or a questioning about, well, how did they get that? What do they have? What did they do? That's any more, probably less than what I do. And so it is, as again the scripture would say, coveting thy neighbor's farm, cow, wife. No connection. I didn't mean to put the cow and the wife together, but you know what I'm saying. So it's maintaining ourselves in a way of simplicity and dignity and civility and respect for ourselves and for the world, all of which I think, however you stand in life, politically, economically, globally, environmentally, wherever you are, I think the call is always to dig deeper, because we can only go farther and wider outwardly when we go deeper and consistently within ourselves. And so the vexations of life are, in, I would say, most, if not all cases, they're a reaction to external stimuli. Somebody says something. I stir up my own perception about what somebody is saying, or somebody is doing, or what the world looks like. And really, I'm causing vexation to my own soul, to my own spirit, which then I leave that part of myself and somehow I start shifting to the parts of me that react out of harassment and irritation and frustration, and I act that anger or that resentment out towards someone else. So if we were to designate that the part of us that is the best part, the part that is already complete and whole, it doesn't need anything, it is self-existent. That's what Holmes described spirit as being, one of its attributes. It's self-existent. It does not rely upon or depend upon anything for its whole, complete, and perfect life. That's, again, the terminology in science of mind. That would be the absolute, unconditioned. And on the other side of that, the absolute, or as much of it as we can understand spiritually and divinely, is the relative. That still something in my life relates to something else. I'm angry because he, she, or it did something. And so to gently start weaving into the virtues and the values of life is to start shifting our focus into the depth of our being, into that very essence of ourself. And life, if you have noticed, as I have, always provides us with ample opportunities. So I have a tendency, I must have a very deep relationship with water. And of course, an astrologer would tell me, well, you're a Pisces, that makes sense. The metaphysical definition or explanation for water is subjective patterns that have not yet been consciously brought into practicality, into reality. The things that you and I all have stirring within us below the level of conscious mind, the things you both want and the things that perhaps you don't even want to take a look at. So one wonderful evening, about 3 weeks ago, I was in my bathroom, my master bathroom, turned on the water, plugged it, and had put, I think, maybe some makeup brushes or something in there to clean. And in the midst of the water running, it was just at a low level at that point, the phone rang. At which point, you're starting to see a picture? Is it forming in your mind? Well, let it flow over, as did the water. Because literally, over an hour later, I walked into the bathroom and was like foot deep in water. And that initial, it's very interesting what we do in that initial moment of emergency. Something emerges that has to transcend the obvious irritation, harassment, vexation. Turn up the water, grab the towel, sop it up, grab the fan from the garage, put it on, start drying. And that's the cycle, literally, that I lived with for like 48 hours. And so I thought to myself, self, you know how you are, what is going on, water flowing, what have you not yet uncovered from within the subjective, subconscious part of your mind? What are you not expressing, exploiting, enhancing, investigating, something? So I said, yeah, we'll think about that later. More towels, sop it up, more fan, put it on high. And so that's a vexation. That's an external event, and yet it isn't cause to my experience. And the disclaimer that always goes out in metaphysical discussions, a discussion like this that brings everything home, does it not out of blame, not out of judgment, but out of a depth of longing for deeper understanding of why I do what I do. And when I do it, am I doing it consciously, or is it coming from some part of me that is yet to be revealed? In spiritual circles, there's always been a statement that says, there are no secrets. All that is hidden eventually is revealed. And of course it's revealed more immediately and with greater clarity when we're willing to go that extra depth, not out there, but from within ourselves. And so, yes, I can say I am cause to my every experience. And I got into quite a discussion with it that same day that I had the conversation about how how I feel about current conditions. And the discussion is always about the idea that I look at myself, but ideally, if the spiritual path isn't about self-discovery and meticulous self-inquiry with compassion, with kindness, then we're taking ourselves off again in that direction of ignorance, of ignoring. I'm here to lovingly, kindly, compassionately, and wisely discover the best of myself. And sometimes the only way I do that is by discovering the parts of myself that I'm not aware of as yet, I haven't yet awakened to. And so that is now the wonderful event that I caused in my experience that now has the opportunity to put in new tile in my bathroom. And then I figured as long as I'm doing it with the master bathroom, I'll do it with the small bathroom too. So who knows what that evolves into. Maybe I'll redecorate the whole house. And so to look for that blessing, particularly, the calendar tells us, be thankful. Thanksgiving is Thursday. I don't need a calendar to tell me that. That needs to become a life, moment by moment practice, much the same. A whole other thing, virtues talk about qualities within ourselves that already exist, and yet they are, as everything is, ready to be awakened to bring into recognition and acknowledgement in order that they can be a blessing, where perhaps humanly vexations can be the opposite side of the coin. They can be a curse in our lives. The virtues of the blessing. So for that, I look to Aristotle. And Aristotle listed this as the 12 virtues. Now, I think I'm doing pretty good. I mean, my life for so very many years has been primarily focused on this self-discovery, on spiritually discovering the parts of myself that are strong and yet kinder and more generous, clearer, more mindful than other parts I've experienced in my life. So this gives a little bit of a, yes, you are enough. Obviously, everything is already within you, and yet who of us cannot grow more fully into that expanded breadth and depth and dimension of more of the goodness of who we essentially are? So Aristotle tossed these 12 virtues: courage, temperance, can't read my writing, liberality, be liberal, open-minded, magnificent, self-satisfaction, honor, good temper, equanimity, which again the Buddhists talk about so much, truthfulness, wit, having a sense of humor, being able to stand in an overflowing sink and the bathroom floor and to say, how creative you are. You can do by just the turn of a knob, or not the turn of a knob. Magnificent. So a sense of humor, friendship, and justice, impartiality. So the call is always, temperance. How much am I in control of what I think, what I do, and how I respond? And it relates to every one of our habits in the physical sense, to the way we treat our bodies, to either our overindulgence or ignoring and underindulgence in taking care of our bodies, and in taking care of our minds and our whole sense of self. And so to turn to that other part of our mind, to the very soul of the universe which lives within us, is to come to a realization that nothing is separated. I've mentioned before a wonderful teacher, Richard Rohr, and his organization, I think is called Compassion, or anyway, he's a trained Jesuit. And Christianity is the basis for everything that he teaches, and yet along with teachers like Matthew Fox, he's expanded into the whole concept of universal creativity and the idea that we're all here to demonstrate this divine God, Buddha nature, whatever you describe it, again, is the best part of who we are. And so he's, every week, if you're on his mailing list, he has a series of teachings from himself and from other teachers on his staff at his organization in New Mexico. And this whole past week, it was on politics and religion. And you know, that goes into a whole other discussion in terms of teaching spirituality, particularly with our Centers for Spiritual Living and the teachings of the science of mind. And yet more and more through the course of the years, that was something we would not touch with a 10-foot pole. It was like, we're here to teach the spiritual concept of life, that ultimately beyond everything we see and yet included in everything we see is that which we can't see. That essence, that energy, that intelligence, that impelling urge of love that really wants to emerge, and a creative law that takes us at the very depth of what we do believe and creates the physical forms of it. And so Richard Rohr has been discussing, you can't divorce anything from anything else. If the principle of life, regardless of whether it's taught through Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, or religious science, the basis is always unity, that there is one something or one no thing that becomes everything. And however you choose to visit that and to explore it for yourself, it still will always trace itself back to one source, one power, one intelligence, one life, one love, one law. And so he was describing that we have to take that sense of the unity and the totality and wholeness and love essence of ourselves and intelligently let that flow into and be the calming influence in any topic that now approaches politics, economics, again, global warming, the environment, because the things that are happening now, we know, are like that overflowing sink in my bathroom, collectively and universally spread widely. They're things that look like long-held resentments and grudges and angers and feelings of disenfranchisement that have left so much of our population, our human divine family, left in a feeling of separation. And so to bring all that together is exactly what the call is. That's why we're here in this time, in this life, with currently what's going on. It is to face the situation, not from a fighting fire with fire, but from gathering, again, the momentum to exhibit courage and temperance and liberal thinking and self-fulfillment of the best of ourselves. It's to bring truthfulness and wit and extend a hand in friendship to everyone we see, because the only way that anything of the divisiveness and separation is going to be healed is if we are willing to listen to each other and to hear something that we're not aware of. I was talking to the same friend and describing that, you know, I grew up in New York City, and certainly in a highly multicultural environment. Every color, every race. In those days, we never did, I don't know, sexual preferences. That was something, you were heterosexual, and that was it. Anything else never got talked about. And so, and yet, what I came to discover through our conversation, I still found my tribe. I didn't have any black friends. I didn't have any Asian friends. It was nodding acquaintances in classes. And I noticed that that's what we still do. We still all find our tribe, and yet our tribes are meeting in one great powwow, where we're all sitting around the fire and discussing, well, what do you believe? And how does this all fit with you in life? Well, how does that all work? And yet again, I have to come back to oneness, to the fact that no matter how you look, what you say, how you think, how you perceive life, it still boils down to the truth that we are one. We are related. We are one divine family. I love what Holmes said in one of his writings. He was describing that we're all universal citizens living in a universe that actually is a celestial metropolis. So take that and think of it. Let's all say, I live in a celestial metropolis. I live in a celestial metropolis as a universal citizen of life. As a universal citizen of life. Imagine really not just saying that because we're all members of the tribe that's meeting here at this Center for Spiritual Living or watching on live stream or YouTube. Yes, come out of your tribe, investigate who's wearing a different garment, who has a different perception and a different way of interpreting the one life force that is giving all of us the same breath, and yet we're all breathing it from a different level of understanding and awareness. And so that brings us to values. Now, the root of the word value, it says, be worth. Value, be worth. Notice it doesn't say have worth, do worthy things. It says be. Be the thing you most value. It's one thing to talk about it. We all talk a very intelligent, intellectual game. We can spout from this author, that teacher. One of my grandsons, who is just 21, has just embarked on what is really morphing into a musical career at the ripe young age of 21. I don't know what he does exactly, but I've described, he's the one that has his own little studio and mixes and matches the music, and then has his own words that he puts in his own music to it, but takes all of the musical sounds and mix. Anyway, he's been doing this for years. Was happy to get out of high school and just made his own declaration. This is what I'm doing. I know the norm would be to go to college, not doing it. And so lo and behold, working with a group and working with a group of very smart people, in addition to being musicians and smart as he is, they have just been signed to a record deal by a very small company that focuses really not on existing known talent, but rather with an eye toward looking ahead to a possibility of seeing something, of sensing something, of those virtues and those values upon which all of us need to base our lives. And so they're presently, and have been for the past 3 months, now he's getting a handle on the business angle of the back and forth, because the contract still has not been actually signed on the dotted line. And so he asked me on several occasions over the recent span of time to give him some tips on some teachers. Oh, that's all you have to ask me. It's like, Grandma, give me a couple of books or some YouTubes. So, my text was like my son with the guitar from here to there. So I said, but you can go on YouTube. You don't have to buy the books now. Just go and get a flavor. So of all the ones I gave him, from Pima Chodron to Wayne Dyer, he picked Wayne Dyer. Because wherever we all are, again, that's part of coming out of your tribe and thinking, I know my grandson, and because I know what I know, he'll like what I know. Not necessarily. Not so at all. And yet every teacher from every tradition, and particularly someone who continues to point us to ourselves, will have our answer, and yet in the unique language that speaks to us. And so he's like, yeah, he's into Wayne Dyer now. We'll know where all of that goes, but it's such a great feeling to bring what we all feel is a higher way of living in the world, of somehow being of help and support and encouragement and inspiration to everyone we meet, wherever we are. I was sitting having lunch outside the other day, and you know, those huge Cisco trucks that deliver all kinds of food and product to all of the merchants, was delivering right in the parking lot where I was. And the young man who was the driver, I noticed he had an interesting T-shirt on. He was slim and brisk and just kept carrying these huge trolleys full of merchandise. And I wanted to see what it said on the back of his T-shirt. And sure enough, it said, "Bold thinking brings change." That's simple. Bold thinking. You have to exceed the boundaries of what is perceived to be the norm. The norm is everyday living where there are vexations. Thinking boldly is to use that vexation as the leading edge into my virtues and what I value. Do I value honesty? Let me see if I also mark down any of the values. Okay, here's some values. And again, thinking we do very well, I'm doing great. Check this out. Values: dependability, reliability, loyalty, commitment, open-mindedness, consistency, honesty, efficiency, service to others, courage, perseverance, determination, resilience, flexibility, all of which is consciously determined or subjectively just let to mull around without any direction from us. So what's the bottom line? Yes, the Buddhists would say in the world we have some suffering, and yet there's something we can do about it. Give up your attachment to having things your way, bring an open-mindedness and a more virtuous approach to listening and learning from others and from yourself, and your life takes on a whole different tone. And the biggest benefit is the world starts to look differently. You know, if you'll notice, some of the political candidates now are actually mentioning words like soul. We want to restore the soul of the United States. Others are talking about love. That if everything we're seeing is the evidence and the manifestation of fear, according to many, many wise teachers, spiritual teachers through the ages, the other side of fear is love. So to bring love and not to be ashamed of it is to bring kindness, is to bring generosity, is to bring compassion, is to bring your virtuous self, your valued self, into all of the vexations and to see them go poof, just like blowing a feather to the wind. And so it is.